Okay, so what we're just going to do is go through a few practices that for some of you will be very familiar. Some of you will have, done them in other sessions from this membership. But I just want to kind of bring you through them in one bundle. So forgive me that it's not going to be a beautifully balanced segue practice, segueing from one thing to another, but quite this, and this. Nonetheless, I think you'll be able to zone in and yeah, connect as you see fit. So you're very welcome to close your eyes or leave them open. And we'll start with two breathing practices that have research for perimenopausal people. So when I look into research, I want to see, has it been done on people in perimenopause? Not, is it something that helps generally in a very broad cohort, because perimenopause is a tricky customer. A lot of what's been researched has been given an English name. There's not a lot of specific practice research in terms of yoga practices that help with specific things. So, for instance, we know that Kapalabhati and Uddiyana Bandha tend to be positive for the pelvic floor, but they are not exclusively researched in postmenopausal women, but we know that they affect postmenopausal women. And we know that postmenopausal women have been involved in those studies, just not exclusively. Most studies into the use of anything to help with osteoporosis have been done on postmenopausal women because that's the cohort most at risk, for example. So we're not lucky enough to get everything researched just for our gang. But where it has been researched, it's often adopted from yoga or other Eastern practices. So paced breathing is the name given to basically a deeper, slower breath, and that's been researched and shown to support sleep, anxiety, and hot flushes in menopausal women. You'll see a few different descriptions of paced breathing on the internet. The most robust, detailed study that I've read about paced breathing is that it's breaths at a rate of 6 breaths per minute. You'll have heard me say that for some of us that's too fast, and for some it may be too slow. I'm going to count you what 6 breaths per minute would feel like, and then I would like you to take over for yourself and see what actually works for you. I'm going to be timing it on my phone so I get it like literally exact. So excuse me that I'm looking at my phone. So might be very interested to see how fast it feels. So if we could all breathe out, and I'm going to count that you breathing in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and exhaling, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathing in, 2, 3, 4, 5, and breathing out, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in, 2, 3, 4, 5 and out. 2, 3, 4, 5 and breathing in. 2, 3, 4, 5 and out. 2, 3, 4, 5. And just let that go and notice if that was too fast for you. And instead, see what would work for you. So what I'm going to do in a moment is I'm going to time a minute for you and let you breathe a deeper breath than your normal breaths, which is usually about 14 breaths per minute, and see how you get on. See how many you happen to take in that 1 minute. So I'll start that minute in 5, 4, 3, 2. Start counting your breaths now. And that's a minute right there. So just notice how many breaths you did. And if that wasn't stressful for you, and it was at most 6 breaths, possibly something less, then consider that that could be your practice. So what we're going to do is do 5 minutes breathing at that rate that you found. And when we're doing a breath practice, when we're literally just sitting, we're not having to look after any kind of thing about abdominal tone or pelvic floor tone. If you find breathing deeply difficult, you might think about, for instance, trying to let the belly relax to create that space for that breath, but you may not need that at all. So I'm going to give us a timer for 5 minutes. And anyone here now or anyone watching the recording, if you're here now, you can stop me and ask me. But if you're watching the recording, feel free to email me any questions. So the research that we had about paced breathing before we do this 5 minutes was that people who practiced it for 15 minutes, and there's more than one study, but this is a very robust and detailed study. People who practiced it for 15 minutes twice a day for, gosh, I can't remember how many weeks it was, then showed improvements in sleep, anxiety, and hot flushes, and were also able to use it as a sort of intervention when they were in those moments most effectively. And the improvement was something along quite good, like 56 or something %. There were 2 other cohorts, though. There was another cohort that practiced it just 15 minutes once a day. And then there was another cohort who just paused, but didn't do the deep breathing for those 15 minutes. Twice a day for the pause, once a day for the breathing were the other 2 cohorts. And the improvement for the people who just paused, but didn't do any deep breathing, that was better than the people who breathed for just 15 minutes practice. So the pausing has a big impact as well. Pausing and doing flip and nothing. That's the closest we'll come to having some research probably done on just stopping and doing nothing. So while the breathing can be very helpful, don't get too hard on yourself if you find that bit hard. And just know that the sitting and doing nothing is worthwhile. And by the way, the less effective thing of the 15 minutes a day instead of 2 patches of 15 minutes a day was only less by about, I think it was 56, 48, and 46 or 45 or something in terms of percentage of improvement. So 45% improvement is pretty good anyway, or 45% of people experiencing improvement is pretty good anyway. So even if you don't manage to do a half an hour, which is a big ask, and they, as far as I know, they didn't do a study where they were able to pepper the breathing through the day. It was 15-15, so I wouldn't think that it would be any less beneficial to do 3 patches of 5 minutes a day. So let's enjoy 5 minutes of silence, breathing at a rate that is comfortable for you, feels a little deeper, and being okay if we forget to do our deep breathing. So I'll start the timer now and see you on the other side of 5 minutes. Stay with the breath practice. And after that 5 minutes, we're going to adjust it slightly. So we're going to move to boxed breathing, where the inhale and the exhale are of equal length, and the pause at the top of the breath in and the pause at the bottom of the breath out are equal length of the inhale and exhale. You're very welcome to work at any rate that soothes you and suits you. The pause is the part where some people find they are a little stressed. But think of it as a pause, either top and bottom of the breath as a pause, just a waiting, not a holding, not a competition. And we'll try to breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, gently pause, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and gently pause, 2, 3, 4, and inhale, 2, 3, 4, and wait, 2, 3, 4, exhale. Do it less long if you need to. 4, and pause, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, and pause, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and pause, 2, 3, 4, breathe in, 2, 3, 4, and pause, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, and pause. I'm going to change the language, keep the breath. 4. As you breathe in, imagine the growth of spring. As you pause, imagine the heady fullness of summer. As you exhale, imagine the gentle fall of trees in autumn. As you pause, imagine the stillness of winter. As you inhale, the growth of spring. As you pause, the fullness of summer. As you exhale, the gentle fall of autumn. As you pause, the winter stillness. Breathing in and pause. Exhale, a leaf drifting down, and pause. Maybe the stillness of snow. Breathing in, shoots of green growth. Pause, all the insects in the air of a summer's evening, and exhale. In your own time, we'll continue for another 2.5 minutes to a total of another 5 minutes. Breathing in your own time, pausing, exhaling, and pausing. After your next exhale, let that go, perhaps returning to natural breath or to paced breathing. And just notice how you're doing. And a little tool that I use that we don't have research about as yet, but we do seem to know that it helps with stress, is to orientate through the senses. So allow yourself to notice something that you would determine as being the effects of touch. So it might be pressure, a hand resting on a leg, a foot against the floor, bum on a seat, clothing on your skin. Notice anything you can hear. And then with a few blinks, open your eyes and look around your room, wherever you are, as if you're wandering into a museum or an art gallery and you're on your own and you've plenty of time and there's just some kind of vaguely interesting exhibits, nothing absolutely fascinating, but you're interested enough to see them, notice the shape of them. But imagine everything that you see is an abstract exhibit. It's not a thing that you're supposed to name, but just notice its shapes and colors, etc. This is a practice that I use a lot if I feel anxious or getting wrapped up in worrisome thoughts. Just to orientate through my eyes in a very passive, vaguely interested and objective way. Just notice how that feels in your body, in your nervous system, your breath. And while you orientate like this, notice if there's anything in your body that feels good. And then when you're ready, I would offer you to come to the floor. We'll be doing a little bit of a practice on our backs on the floor, and then we'll be doing one restorative pose. And within the time of the restorative pose, I will be doing a little CBT exercise with you. But you're very welcome to ignore me while you're in the restorative pose, is what I'm saying, because you may decide just to zone out, and you can always listen to it again. And I know that a lot of you in the membership have done one CBT exercise with me. I'm going to try and make it different. What I want to do, though, is set you up for your restorative before you come flat to the floor, so that from being flat on the floor, you'll be able to move straight into your restorative. And I'm recommending either legs up the wall, which does have some research on it to support sleep, or just any inversion has research that shows that it supports sleep. But I'm not aware of that research being done in perimenopausal women. But I would say that whatever affects people in general may not work as well for perimenopause, but it will have that little effect that I was talking about in the presentation, where it's worth doing these things even if it gives you a couple more minutes sleep or a slightly deeper sleep. So reclining cobbler is very different. So legs up the wall is one option you can choose, and that's bring yourself a nice blanket to the wall. I'll just show you, we're not going to come into it yet, but you'll be going sideways into the wall, lying on your back, rolling your legs up the wall, and feeling free if you want to elevate the pelvis a bit higher by lifting the bum and sliding a bolster or a block or just a cushion under your pelvis. But you want the pelvis tilted away from the face so that you're not throwing the weight up onto your shoulders and that your back is slightly arched if you're using an elevation, but you don't have to. You're already upside down if your bum is on the floor. You don't need this extra height. If you prefer to be in something a little maybe more dramatic physically, so it's going to give you a nice back bend, it's going to give you a nice opening for your hips. We'll do my savior of my menopause, but there is no research to say that this one posture saves you in menopause, despite what I hear about a very well-known yoga teacher who has a book on women's health and has lots of very specific claims about individual restorative poses and menopause, but we won't go into that. But it's reclining cobbler, which you can do with the bolster flat on the floor, or you can do with the top of the bolster elevated. The point of elevating the top of the bolster is that if you have a lower back that finds extension too difficult, having the bolster in a slight ramp will reduce the arch. But if you like a very extensive arch in the lower back, just depends on you, then having the bolster flat will be a little more dramatic. You don't need drama though. We have plenty of drama. And then you can get that little hip situation going on if you let the soles of the feet together to come and bring the knees wide. So that's you won't, it depends on your space whether you can leave that set up and just hop onto it after a practice on the floor, or you may need to move it out of the way. But the point is, I just wanted you to be set up or knowing what you're going to do and have everything nearby so that I don't have to disturb you. I will be, after I talk through the CBT practice in the cobbler, I'll be leaving you as you are because I don't want to go over time for the people who are live. But also, yeah, I think you'll be fine. So what we're going to do now, though, is start on the floor with nothing. You can lie on something really cushy, and or you can put a blanket over you. So please don't be in an ascetic and miserable situation, but you don't need anything particular. Lie in any way you like. And we're just going to start by stroking the hands. You're welcome to work with your eyes open or closed. And try not to stroke the hands as if you're just kind of mindlessly washing them, but stroke them very consciously. And try and notice what it's like to determine the experience of both hands, the one that's receiving as well as the one that's giving. They may be both jumping from one to the other, both receiving, both giving. But notice what sort of sensation you notice the most and see if you can notice the other. So are you mostly noticing the experience of what the fingers are feeling under them as they move on something, or are you mostly noticing the experience of the bit that's being stroked? And just see if you can play with noticing both. And a bit like when we looked around, as if we were in a museum with not wildly fascinating exhibits, but interesting enough. Could you be a bit like that with your hands, as if you are using touch to explore a kind of interesting thing you've never felt before? No judgment, just curiosity. And then could you slightly shift your intention and notice If you can bring in the idea of touching yourself with an aim for compassion and pleasure and signaling to your body tenderness, and allow that movement to journey down your arms. Maybe you need to do one arm at a time. Maybe up to the shoulders and the neck. To the jaw, the cheeks. Begin to tenderly attend to your face. And what we're doing here is aiming for a connection to the nervous system, mapping the nervous system through touch. Nervous system finishes more or less at our skin, though actually it moves into space to check other nervous systems in the world around us, but physiologically mapping the nervous system at its extremities. But also touch is supportive of the release of the feel-good hormones. Let's allow the hair or the head, the neck and face to be touched, maybe down onto the trunk, across the chest, breasts, ribs, belly, anywhere you can reach, down to the hips. Sorry, it's making me yawn. The legs, the thighs, the buttocks. Maybe you need to lift a leg, and bringing touch all the way through the whole body, down to the ankles and the feet and the toes. Don't neglect anything. Even a passing hello to the pelvic floor, the buttocks. Mapping the body through touch. And when you've gotten to everywhere, could you turn that into a pandiculation where you just allow the body to yawn, stretch, and move for pleasure? And this would be a nice little symptom reliever if when you wake up in the morning before you get out of bed, allow yourself a yawn stretch. And there are so many symptoms that aren't often listed as symptoms, like a reduction of pleasure, a reduction of joy. And moving in ways that are very non-sexually pleasant and pleasurable, I think can be a great induction and a reminder to the body and the nervous system that enjoying the very physical nature of being is still available to us. Let's come to rest and just feeling what you notice now in the body. And all those somatic practices that I teach you are great for the induction of pleasure. And there's a load of classes on the resource that are replete with those kinds of yummy, simple, sensual movements. I highly recommend them for feeling good in menopause. I'd love to give you more time there, but let's clamber into our restorative, whatever version you're choosing. Make sure you're going to be warm, knowing that you can stay here way after I finish this session. You might be here for 20 minutes. You never know. Make all the adjustments you need and bring the sensuality of what we've just done into the way that you start to shimmy and shift to get yourself as comfy as you can. And let yourself settle there. And as I said, you're very welcome to ignore what I say from now on, which is just some CBT suggestions for menopause. In the past, we've done one about sleep, about waking sleepless and noticing the thoughts that we have and whether they serve us in any way, and how just shifting the thoughts to something more neutral can be really helpful. And that's really the very basic and most repeated element of CBT. But there are other ways, other thoughts, other aspects of CBT. And there's the protocol that I've introduced you to before called What's Right Attention is very similar to CBT. So it's choosing in a moment what you're going to focus on. And that is central also to CBT. It's where do I decide to put my energy? And if we're looking to assist ourselves in that regard, then putting our energy and our attention onto what feels good and right in the moment may be more beneficial. So practice right now, noticing what feels good about this moment. It could be the sensation of the blanket that you're using against your skin. It could be the gentle stretch in your tissues. It could be the sound of a breeze outside your window. If your eyes are open, it could be the pattern on the curtains or a color or on a picture. It doesn't have to be a physical experience of your own. You can allow your attention to drift to something outside you that you're kind of liking. Could be just a beautiful leaf that you can see out the window or in a plant in your room. Look for and notice something that feels right in this moment. Could just be the simple existence of the sky. And if you can't find anything that feels right, if you're struggling in a way that makes that difficult, it can be what feels okay. Could be just okay that you're there wrapped in a blanket, or okay that nobody's annoying you right now. This is the simple choice that exists with all the other stuff. Yes, all the things that you're struggling with exist, but also some other stuff. And the difficult things will definitely find their way to get your attention. You don't need to worry about forgetting them and them getting neglected. They will find a way. It's less easy to make sure that what our body is loving isn't neglected, it isn't ignored. Where CBT has been used for hot flushes, it's mostly around women sense that people are watching them and feeling exposed and embarrassed by having hot flushes, which is a shame. But the likelihood is that in the world, mostly people don't really give a toss about much at all about other people's stuff. And they're really more interested in their own stuff. So that would be one way to consider is, you know, what do other people really think of you? It's very likely much less fascinated by you than you might imagine. Just allowing that sense of simplicity in. And knowing that you can make some changes can really help. So let's say if you're struggling with sleep, you can make changes. And they may not work immediately. But anything that gives us a sense of a little bit of control can help us to feel less distressed by what we're struggling with. So little tiny things that might feel like a support that might adjust things even a tiny bit, like I was talking about with the sleep. So moving away from catastrophe and more towards potential, moving away from I can't cope to let's see how I deal with this moment. Moving from everyone is looking at me to I notice this more and other people may not be even looking. From this would go on forever, the sleep or the lack of or the hot flushes, to this will gradually reduce or I will eventually get back to sleep. And there's some key things in CBT that we ask ourselves when we're having a thought that is feeding the difficulty is this thought really accurate? Like if we were to be listening to a kid saying this about themselves, I'm falling apart, nothing's going to go right again. We would, as an adult, be able to think, okay, they're catastrophizing. We know this isn't true. Can we ask that of ourselves? Is this really true? And then a really common part of CBT is to imagine what someone who cares about you would say to you in this circumstance, and say it to yourself. And what would you say to someone that you loved who is having this difficulty? And always looking for the self-supportive alternative. One of the priorities with sleep, for example, is making sure not to cancel the next day, but to prioritize what we absolutely need to do. It's a practical application. And to keep letting ourselves remember the moments when we have coped with difficult things. A reminder to self, I have managed before. So that's quite a lot of little bits of CBT thrown your way. And you're very welcome to play this recording again, the last, 10 minutes, to just jot some notes when you're not in a lovely restorative yoga pose. So I invite you to stay there as long as you like, just letting the body rest. And when we rest in challenging circumstances, maybe we're physically challenged by being stretched like this. I don't mean pain. Physically challenged because it's a bit of a stretch and it's kind of like, oh, I'd rather be watching a movie or eating some chocolate or you know, feel a little bit exposed or something. But one of the ways in which we can calm that stressful part of the brain, or the part of the brain that reacts before we consciously choose our reaction, that limbic system, that more reptilian brain, is to allow ourselves to notice pleasurable experiences and to relax in challenging circumstances. There's plenty of challenge outside of our yoga postures, but using this as a practice ground, perhaps, to breathing deeply and relaxing and looking for what feels good in challenging circumstances, which can help just soothe that deep part of the brain that can sometimes get a little overheated and overreactive, particularly in menopause when the HPA, the stress axis, the stress response can be a little overwrought. So I invite you to stay there and rest as long as you like. But when you do decide to come back to the world, do so step by step with breath, with awareness of some of your senses, with that looking around thing, and with spending some time sitting with the practice, with the memory of the practice, maybe jotting some notes, a little journaling before you meet other people or get on with the mundanities of your day. I'm going to put a separate recording up a little later of Kirtan Kriya, which has research for brain health, so that you'll have an access to a timed meditation, which I'll go into. It's the one other research-based thing that I haven't gone into. Actually, there's loads. Last week I haven't done, and Uddiyana Bandha, but we've done that at other times. Sleep tight, or whatever it is you're going to do next. And thanks for your time. Namaste, and reach out for any help that you need. Goodbye.